Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Ben, and this is the monthly wrap-up for March of 2024. So in this video, I am just going to give a brief summary of the books that I finished reading in March of 2024. All of these books I have discussed in more detail in previous videos, particularly the Fresh Read Kills videos that I do, where I talk about books that I have recently finished reading, and I give pretty much all of my thoughts, as much as I can think of at least, in these unscripted videos, at that time. So anyhow, this is just going to be a very quick summary. If you want to know more about what I think about them, you can go to those other videos. So most of March was dedicated to this. Stephen King's The Stand. This was my March of the Mammoths pick. March of the Mammoths is a booktube event where people choose a book that is at least 800 pages from their shelves to finally start reading it. If you can finish it in March, that's great. You don't have to. But I did actually finish this in March. And this is a big book, but it reads very quickly. It's not a slow read at all, which is nice. And as I said in my discussion, my Fresh Read Kills video, I did like this quite a bit. I did not think that the ending, or at least I should say the conflict resolution, worked. I knew going in what that was already going to be. There's a good deal about this book that I already knew about, either from watching the miniseries back in the 90s when I was younger, or just hearing over the years things about this book. So there wasn't a huge amount of surprise in here. I was more looking at the craft, about the way that Stephen King ended up, basically completing this or fulfilling this. And I did like it. I thought that, this is basically split up into 4 sections. The first section is about a plague, which people call Captain Trips, which basically wipes out more than 90% of the human population. And that stuff was excellent. It was engaging. There was a drive to the writing. I was totally hooked. The second half, we see the survivors start coalescing around 2 different individuals, one of good and one of evil. So we got Mother Abigail, who is God's prophet, basically, and Randall Flagg, who is demonic. And we're mostly following the followers of Mother Abigail as they try to recreate society over in Boulder, Colorado. And I thought that stuff was interesting. It does lack the same propulsion of the first half, so you do start feeling things slow down. But as I said in my video, I appreciated what King was actually doing there in terms of not allowing his heroes to turn into a cult or, create some kind of crazy theocracy. So I did like that. And then the fourth book, we look more at Randall Flagg's people. The third part of the book. We look at Randall Flagg's people in Las Vegas more closely, and we finally see the stand, like the stand against evil, apparently. Although that's the thing that ends up being very disappointing in this book. But I liked it. Didn't like the ending, but still, I'm glad I read it, and I still think it's a very good book. I also read. So while I was reading that big thing, I was just trying to pick things off my shelves that I thought would be really quick and pretty much easy to read. And this was one of them. This is something that I had gotten, I think, from a Costco a year or so ago. Spooky New England, Tales of Hauntings, Strange Happenings, and Other Local Lore, retold by S.E. Schlosser. There's like a whole series of these things for states. She's got quite an empire going with these sorts of things. And this wasn't exactly what I was hoping it would be. So I am somebody who is interested in, local lore, stories of hauntings, things like that. I'm not really a believer in the supernatural at all, but I do find that sort of thing an interesting gateway into folk belief, or the way that we view the past and choose to remember it. There's a lot of things that go in there that I think are of more academic interest. And I was hoping I was going to get not an academic perspective, but maybe more of a kind of a plain retelling where I could actually use an academic lens for these stories. But that's not really what it is. So she presents this more as like short stories. You get the story, and the only real context you get a title, and then you get the place where it's either comes from or it's supposed to take place in. And she does have at the end a list of resources, but you really don't know what resources connect with which stories. So it's hard to check things. And you can always tell what's original story, what she's created. The writing itself, I think is written more for a younger crowd. It's not marketed that way. I mean, it's actually a very nice looking book, I think. You think this is actually more for adults, but it feels like more like a young adult book, more like children's literature. And which is okay. I'm okay with that. Once I figured out what I was reading, I'm like, okay, it's just made for an even quicker read. But my main gripe was some of the questionable history in here. I talk about that more in detail inside my video about it. So would I recommend it? Not really, especially not to adults. But younger people, yeah, there's questionable history, but they might get something more out of the stories. And the other things that I was reading in March were these. So these are DC Deluxe editions of Batman Detective Comics issue 1000, issue 1027. We've got Action Comics 1000 Superman, and we've got a Swamp Thing Deluxe edition, which is called Roots of Terror. So a bunch of like short stories, and also a tribute to Len Wein or Wein. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but one of the co-creators of Swamp Thing, who it's kind of a tribute or dedication to him. He had passed away. So I'd gotten these super cheap, I think maybe like $2 each, off of Hamilton Books a while back. My kids have started reading superhero comic books, and I've just kind of gotten back into it. Something I used to read a lot when I was in middle school, and every so often I go back to them, and I like picking up graphic novels. Of all these, I thought this one was the most interesting. I like this one the best, especially there's a story featuring the Eisner-nominated tale, The Talk of Saints. It says that above the title there. I thought that was the best story, but I like this one overall. These were okay. Some stories were stronger than others. I thought that they all had a tendency to get kind of schmaltzy, a little bit saccharine. And some of these things, like, for instance, in Action Comics, they called them variant covers, but, I mean, we've just got, yeah, I mean, obviously this kind of thing, this looks pretty good, but not all these things need to really be in here. Not all of them are super impressive. Even though they're calling them variant covers, they just seem like filler to me. One of the things I did like, I don't think I mentioned this in the video that I had done, but they did actually put in the very Action Comics #1, the first issue of Superman. So you get that at the back of the book to read, which that was probably my favorite part of this. So would I recommend these? I mean, if you can get them for $2, yeah. I wouldn't pay full price, but of these, the one that I liked the most, again, was this one, Swamp Thing. And that's it. That's pretty much all I had time for March. Certainly Stephen King's The Stand took up a lot of time. It's not a small book. So in March, once again, I read some DC Deluxe editions. I read Stephen King's The Stand. I read Spooky New England. As always, if you've read any of these, I would love to hear your thoughts. And thank you, BookTube.